Today's guest is on a mission to help women take back control of their health and feel their best from the inside out. After navigating her own long and challenging journey through infertility, miscarriages, IVF, and postpartum recovery, Katy Whalen found herself drained, fatigued, hormonal, battling brain fog, and wondering why the system had supported her through fertility treatments but seemed to stop caring once her baby was born. It was through her husband's business, Blokes, that Katy discovered the tools that would transform her life. By diving deep into her own biomarkers, balancing her hormones, and incorporating peptides, she finally began to feel alive again with the energy and vitality she needed to care for the family she had worked so hard to create. But Katy didn't stop there. She wanted other women to experience that same transformation, so Joi Wellness was born. Through Joi, Katy and her team empower women to manage their health holistically with innovative therapies like peptide treatments, all delivered virtually to make care accessible and personalized. In today's conversation, we are diving deep into women's metabolic health. I ask her questions about GLP-1 medications, as you know them, semaglutide or Ozempic. We talk about metabolic health when it comes to your hormones, as well as postpartum and premenopause, perimenopause, and some game-changing health benefits of peptides, what they are, what they can do, and if they are right for you. If you've ever felt like the healthcare system has left you without answers, or you've just been curious about this buzz around peptides and treatments like Ozempic, this episode is for you. Katy is amazing. She shared so much valuable information. She shares her own journey, her expertise, and how she is helping thousands of women nationwide reclaim their health and vitality. So let's get into it. Welcome to the Trust Issues Podcast, the show where we question everything society tells us about how to live, work, eat, and be. I'm Erica Auckland, a mom, entrepreneur, and advocate for living life on your own terms. Here we challenge the status quo, from the food we feed our families to the way that we build wealth and well-being. You'll hear unfiltered conversations with everyone from farmers, financial experts, and everyday people who are doing life differently, all with one goal: to help you live healthier, freer, and more abundant. If you've ever felt like there's more to life than following the crowd, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Katy, welcome to the Trust Issues Podcast. I'm pumped to have you.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
I'm excited to dive in. All things peptides. I think there's some hot topics we're going to get into, but before we do, what is your company? I'd love to have you explain who you are, what you do, and who you help and your mission.
Yeah, absolutely. My mission is to help women feel better, and it's as simple as that. It's not as easy as that, but it's simple. I want women to feel better, have more energy, look better, really just have more joy in their life. And, for me, it started through my own journey, which I think is pretty typical for anyone that's an entrepreneur. I had an issue, found a solution that worked for me. And once I did, I just knew other women needed it too. For me, it was, I got married later on in life and then started having my family, or tried to have my family, in my mid-30s, and it just was a disaster for me. It was tough. I had a bunch of miscarriages. I did the IVF stuff. And then I did have 2 babies when I was in my early 40s. And I think it's hard enough to have babies anyway, or recover from babies. But for me, it was like all the hiccups, all the things, and then recovering right when I was going into perimenopause. Basically, I just didn't even recognize who I was. I had no energy to now take care of the babies that I wanted. And really I felt super abandoned because I had a lot of help throughout the process of trying to have the babies, and then when I was done, they were kind of like, "Okay, congrats. Have a nice life. Peace." And I'm like, "Wait a minute. What about this? What about this?" And so I created what really helped me, and that was, first of all, owning your own health journey, because we all have to do that. No one's going to do it for us. But it was really getting the information on myself, like what's going on in my body, and then using that to make good choices and try different therapies that I didn't necessarily know about. And so once I started to feel way better than I knew I could again, I was like, all right, let's do this for other women. And that's how Joi was born.
Joi is like on a mission. I'm seeing it all over my social media. I think this conversation around peptides is like taking over. And I think for someone who's, curious about specifically what Joy does, when in terms of peptide therapy, I remember hearing about it and I'm like, are these PEDs, like performance enhancement drugs? Are these steroids? Like, I came from this fitness world. So it was
Oh,
very just new to me. I didn't understand it. I would love for you to explain just on the basics of what peptides are. And I want to get a little bit more into your story as well, because I think so many listeners can resonate with,
hmm
you go through this whole journey and then it's like you are left to figure out and pick up the pieces of postpartum, and then you were on the coattails of perimenopause. We're going to get into all that, but what really are peptides? How do they work in the body?
it's funny that I feel like people are like, they seem so foreign, but um, they're really small proteins. So a peptide is a short chain of amino acids, so 2 to 50, and then a protein is 51 or more amino acids. So um, that's what they are structurally, but then really what we want to know is like, how do they work, right? So I think of them as a key that opens a lock or opens a door. They really tell or signal our cells to perform specific tasks. So we have thousands of peptides that are in our bodies and they are telling our cells what to do. So we have peptides that we can add in that help with that and do anything from healing a wound to improving your gut health to obviously weight loss, to telling your cells to release more of your own growth hormone. So lots of different things that they can do, but they basically help our cells function.
Let's talk about some of the most popular peptides. And I think specifically everyone's talking about semaglutide. Tirzepatide is another one I've heard of. I want to
Mm-hmm.
get into some of those first. I think a lot of people are curious on that because there's so much controversy on them. Are they bad for you? Should you be taking them? And from what I've seen and some of the research I've done, that they're actually incredibly helpful. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd love your take. Obviously, you do this work with Joy. So can you talk to us about semaglutide, these GLP-1s?
Yeah, the GLP ones, it's so interesting because, first of all, I'm a very holistic person. So when it comes to just throwing a pill at a problem, that is like, I am not your girl. Like, I think that there's ways that we need to treat our body and ways that we need to heal root cause. So I get some of the negativity and backlash on these. I really do. But I do think we should be looking at them differently because they are a peptide and to me are a little bit different than your average just like medication that you're using to cover up some action. Peptides in general are very regenerative. And when you look at what GLP-1s do, so GLP-1 receptors are all over our bodies. So what these do is they signal these receptors to do different things. So they'll signal receptors after you've eaten something and they actually help with your blood sugar regulation. They help release that insulin. They also signal receptors in your brain to help you know when you're full. Um, or change cravings, which is very powerful for people, um, myself included. I've witnessed it. This is what this GLP ones is something that one of the first things I did after having my babies. So before it was even like known, it
Before it
was
was a
some
thing?
I was something that I was trying because I had some access to it through someone who's now our medical director. I'm a big believer because they do work and they help your bodies perform tasks and functions that, for some reason somewhere down the line most of us have issues with. There's something
Yeah.
like 70% of the US that has metabolic issues right now. So there's a real problem out there and this is something that's helping with that. And the other thing that I'll say with them is it's not a cure all. Like you have to do it right. It's not a magic pill that you can take and like you can still eat whatever you want or don't have to work out. Like it's a great tool for people, but you have to do it the right way if you want to be successful on it and be healthy.
Who's like a great candidate for either of these GLP-1s? Someone who you're saying metabolic dysfunction, like what does that mean for someone living an everyday life?
You know, I think I mentioned something like 70% of us have it in the US, and that just tells you there's a big problem in general. And so this is one of the tools that we can use for that. And obviously an obvious candidate is someone who's obese or really overweight. But, you could have metabolic dysfunction when you're skinny too. I mean, we're
Mm.
treating a lot of women with PCOS because the underlying root cause of that is metabolic health. Actually, the underlying root cause of a lot of things is metabolic health. Even Alzheimer's, they're studying it for that. So there's a lot of different people who use it, and it really just depends on where you are and what your symptoms and goals are. But if you could do things like using a smaller dose to improve your metabolic health a little bit. It's helping in a lot of different ways. People with joint pain, not just lose weight, but there's other things that it is helping with.
I've seen like through social media, Instagram, people are always sharing things that there's some websites where like you can get peptides. You can just like order them. But in my perspective, I'm like, I would want to work with a practitioner who can tell me, because you just said like small amounts, what's the amount that I actually need based on my specific condition, right? Like I'm wondering like what is the process of deciding, okay, I'm sure you guys do a blood draw. Like what is the process of deciding how much of a peptide or of a GLP-1 someone needs for their unique situation, whether it is PCOS or, something else.
Yeah, I mean, peptides are kind of interesting because the government has, more recently started cracking down on them, and I think that that's going to change with the administration change, and I'm very excited about that. Um, but I think what's happened with peptides when they've removed some of these really wonderful healing peptides, that it's forced people to go to the black market. And then that's where you'll see the market that says you can buy this online without a doctor prescription. And if you buy it on, you'll see on the vials, they have to state that it's not for human consumption and that hasn't been tested because it it's a little it can be a little scary because a lot of those are coming out of China and you just don't know the quality. So I would caution people to be careful um, with going that route because it is important the sourcing to get it from a U.S. based compounding pharmacy that
Mm.
is using you know ingredients that are coming from a manufacturer that has good quality and that are FDA registered inputs. So I would caution people to go that route um, because I think that they're very powerful. And so if you're using something that's kind of not regulated or not, clearly vetted, then it could end up bad for you.
Mm. So, what is the process of someone coming to Joy and saying, okay, I want to lose some weight? How do I figure out what's right for me? How do you guys work with your actual clients? What does that look like? Like walk me through. Like I'm someone who's postpartum. I'm still breastfeeding, so as far as I know, I can't do any peptides currently, right?
Yeah, you can't do much when you're
It's like I'm like
you're on your
pregnant.
own.
I'm in it right now. So it's like pregnancy, breastfeeding. I'm like, okay, we'll talk in a couple years. But okay, say I am a client or someone, a prospective client who wants to, know if I can use some of these peptides. Like, how do you guys work with your clients? Walk me through that.
Yeah, well, there's a couple different pathways. So if you're just someone who's like, I just want to get it now, we offer that. So you don't need a consultation for. You do need a consultation by a doctor, but that can be done asynchronously or synchronously. So if you fill out a health history form and our doctor is behind the scenes looking at that, looking at what your history is, what your family history is, what your goals are, what medications you're taking, they can prescribe asynchronously like something like NAD or Sermorelin, sometimes GLP-1s if you hit specific marks on that health history. That can be prescribed with them just looking through your health history. But we are very hands-on, so a lot of times if you don't get an initial consult, we'll at least send you a link afterwards for one, just to keep following up with you. Most people do like that one-on-one kind of contact, so we'll offer that so you can do both the, face-to-face, tell me what's going on, tell me what I can do, look through my lab, and then from there, we'll ship it to your door. So we do offer both ways, and either way, I think it's really great to have someone just virtually go through stuff and talk with you because it's a lot more hand holding and this stuff. Even though they've been around for decades, they're not really known. So like just having someone letting them answer questions and kind of walk you through it, I think is pretty helpful.
And these are all injected peptides, right? Like you're
Not
in.
all.
Okay, so can we talk about, because I think that's another thing is a lot of people are like, oh, do I have to self inject? Like, what if I'm scared of needles? I mean, this is like some of the questions I'm getting. I pulled my audience. I'm like, what do you guys want to know about peptides? And that was one of the questions of like, how I've never put a needle in my own body before. Like, how do I do this? Is that something, do you guys guide your clients on how to do that?
Yeah, we do. We'll send out instructions and videos, and we also offer, if you're really nervous, like a Zoom to do your first injection.
That's
And
good.
I actually also I've done that a few times, and especially in the beginning of the company, it was great. I actually met um, a wonderful person named Jessica who works for us now by doing that and showing her how to inject first. And she's one of a great health coach and dietitian for us now. But anyway, so
Love
yeah,
that.
we walk you through all that. But it's so funny because it's actually not as hard. Like people get so scared, and we'll do it together, and they'll be like, "Wait, I didn't even feel it." It's like amazing how easy it is. So it's like after you just get through the fear, you're like, okay, I can do this. But not all peptides have to be injected. We have one of my favorite peptides I do as a troche, which is like dissolves in your mouth. And then we
Hmm.
have nasal sprays and creams. So there's different methods.
That's mind blowing. Okay, so we have these GLP-1s that are for, you're saying these are weight loss. This is for primarily metabolic dysfunction,
Hmm.
but there's a whole bunch of other ones. Before I actually got pregnant with my first, I was taking CJC.
Mm,
That
yeah,
was one. And I think I was doing an epimorelin or Samorelin or one of those. Can you talk about some of these other ones? Because you mentioned things like gut health.
yeah.
And I think there's, obviously metabolic dysfunction is a huge thing, but there's all these other peptides. What are some of your other favorites, some popular ones? Can we get
Yeah.
nitty gritty a little bit on them?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorites is what you mentioned, and one that's popular for us is the growth hormone releasing peptide. That's a category of them, and so there's different ones: CJC, ipamorelin, sermorelin, and that is wonderful because if you what it does is tell your body to release more of its own growth hormone, and your
Mm,
growth hormone is what's highest when you're about middle school age. So if you think of all the things it does for you, it helps you sleep better. It helps you recover faster. It helps you build or maintain that lean muscle mass, reduce fat easier. Just all those wonderful like youthful things it does for us. So that's definitely one of my favorite. And then another favorite, we've got this GHK copper peptide, and it's wonderful for skin. So it's super regenerative, and we've got a couple of face creams with that ingredient in it, and it'll actually heal wounds or like stretch marks or anything. So it's really great for healing. I remember there was one month where I had like 3 or 4 random people text me, message me, and just say like I was gonna go to get Botox, and then I was like, I realized I didn't have to. I was like too soon. I don't need it now. So it's powerful. I love that one too.
what? I obviously also off of Botox. And I've kind of been
Yeah.
feeling it lately. I'm like, I don't know if I feel aligned with like Botox. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of information out there that I'm consuming that I'm like, maybe I don't know if this aligns with me. So I'm like putting that on the shelf for a bit. So that's fascinating that you can put peptides on your skin. What about gut health ones? Because I feel like that's a
Mm.
huge constant, like I'm hearing all the time. I'm bloated. I have all these digestive issues. What are some good ones for gut health?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we must be getting served the same things because I literally stopped doing Botox probably like a year ago too because I'm like, I don't know.
Well, your skin looks
To each their
amazing.
own. Oh yeah.
Well,
Well,
I'm like,
yours.
your skin looks amazing. So
Thank
whatever you're doing
you.
is working.
Yeah, that's I'm seeing the same stuff. You and I are getting the same stuff. What was the other question?
Gut health. I know
Gut health.
it's a huge conversation because I mean, I'm almost 36. I'm starting to notice like wrinkles around my eyes and stuff. And I mean, I've gotten Botox for years, like since my 20s. And now I'm like seeing movement in my forehead I've never seen before. So I'm just like, well, I haven't seen it in many years. So I'm like, oh, okay, like how, like what do we do about this? It's a real conversation as you're aging, like things are
Oh,
changing. Like, so to have another backup, I also think like, and I love your take on this. Like there's nothing wrong with signs of aging, but it's like aging gracefully. I'm sure you work with so many women like perimenopause, menopause, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's such a personal choice, as is anything, right? Like,
Of course.
I used to do it and I think it's great for some reason, but I also was seeing all those same things and I'm like, ah, is that something that I really want to do to myself? And what if but I definitely want to age well, and so like I'm trying all the other things. I don't know if you've been served any of the face yoga stuff, but I'm like I'm on all of that, working on all.
Face taping, I've seen it all. I'm like,
Oh, I
"Is
want
that
to do
next
that. I
for us?"
haven't tried that.
I
Yeah.
haven't tried it either, but I'm like, it's in the back of my mind.
Yes. I mean, you haven't been able to do both. Can you do it when you're breastfeeding Botox?
No, but I didn't breastfeed my son for like the full, I had a break between the time that I stopped breastfeeding him and then I got pregnant. So I
Okay.
did sneak a little baby Botox in between.
You're like, now's my time.
That was my time, was my window. And yeah, and then I got pregnant with my second. I'm like, I don't know, like, because I started to see the movement come back. And I'm like, maybe I'm okay.
Yeah.
And I'm this GHK copper. I'm like, I wanna know more about this. So
Yeah.
this is
Well,
very
I can send you some because this is actually that's the one peptide because it's topical you can do. So I'll send you some to try, and you let me know what you think. But
I would
it's a
love that.
great one. Gut health though. To talk about gut health, so BPC 157 I think is the ultimate peptide for gut health. It's very healing. It's derived actually. BPC is derived from the juices of the gut,
Mm,
and it
wow.
is one that we saw so many patients do so well on and no adverse reactions, no allergies, like not I've never heard of a bad reaction from BPC, but the government pulled that one what was it, November 23. So we haven't been able to prescribe it for a while and it broke my heart because it's honestly such a great one, but we do have something newer that we're using instead of it called VIP, and it's a nasal spray. And I've had a lot of great feedback on that. So people saying I wasn't regular, I wasn't able to go to the bathroom. Now I'm regular. People feeling more energetic, feeling like it's lifting their brain fog. So that's a really good one that we've had
Mm.
in newer since BPC got taken away.
Well, hopefully it can come back,
I
with
hope so. Yeah.
like you said, change of administration, maybe there's some hope for that. Because I've also heard about that and just the benefits. I have a friend who actually she gets something shipped from Mexico because she's got a neurological thing or whatever. And she said that
Yeah.
peptide like has helped her so much.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It forces people to like go to weird places to look for this stuff, which is not actually.
Probably
Um,
safer. It's probably not
no,
safer.
no, I don't think it is. So yeah, I am. Honestly, it's something that like as a company we're really working on. Um, that kind of stuff with the government.
Mm.
So we're pushing. We're fighting the fight.
Well, you guys are fighting the good fight. Okay, so we've got stuff for obviously metabolic health. We have you talked about skin, we have gut health. What other things? I'm thinking like, there's a lot of people who talk about aches and pains as you get older. I mean, I think inflammation is such a conversation that people are having. What's a peptide that's really great for inflammation?
Well, again, the BPC and the VIP are both very great for inflammation. Um, a lot of a lot of people love, I mean, we do stuff like NAD, which is really great for energy too and kind of overall vitality. It's actually, if you think about it like from a deeper level, it's kind of like DNA repair.
Mm,
So vitality, longevity. We also we also do a lot of hormones, which if you're thinking about like joint pain and inflammation could help. Maybe not someone as young as you or who's in the process of having babies, but for women that are in their upper 30s, 40s, 50s, we're doing seeing a lot of benefit on testosterone, for instance, is super anti-inflammatory, and a lot of women are low in that. When they come to us, we see a lot of low levels because one thing that we do, we put women on birth control pills for like decades, and that permanently lowers our testosterone because it increases our sex hormone binding globulin. So, I feel like testosterone is really great for inflammatory in general.
wow. I was on birth control for like 5 years in
Hmm.
college. I think, a lot of millennials, we were all on birth control for a bit.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
for sure.
And so like, is testosterone something that you could do between children, or is that something that you would say like do this after you've had kids? I think that's too, like I have a lot of listeners who are in their mom era. So like they're
Yeah.
having babies, but they also still want to feel great. And that's the thing that's kind of tricky, right? It's like, how can you time, like I want to like go through postpartum and then feel awesome again and then have another baby, right? And is that something that someone can do in between babies? How does that work?
I wouldn't rush to get someone on it in between babies. I would
Okay.
say wait. I mean, I think the best thing to do if you're kind of in between and trying to like figure out how to feel better is honestly get a big lab and understand, like, look at what's going on. Because I think that that can tell you a lot of different things. Like, look at a full thyroid panel, look at your inflammation, look at where your vitamins and minerals are. Chances are, if you're having babies and breastfeeding, there's some things that you're deficient in. So you could do just simple things like maybe change your supplement routine. Maybe you need to kind of adjust what you're eating if something's causing you inflammation. Maybe you need to work on your stress. We see a lot of gals with high cortisol levels. So just kind of that kind of I would recommend if you're a mom trying to feel better, it's like figure out what's going on underneath and then make more lifestyle, more holistic changes from that.
Do you guys do supplement recommendations? Like aside from peptides, do you guys do that where you will do a panel with someone and then tailor supplements for them?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually call them our smart supplements because for a couple years we were doing these big lab reviews and then we'd be like, you're deficient here, here, and here. Go find them. Go find your supplements. And it'd be like, 10 different bottles of
Oh,
supplements that someone would have to buy. So we developed something where we actually take your top deficiencies and we can put 6 to 8 of those deficiencies into one pack for you to just kind of grab that pack and go. So, and it's only $99 a month, which is a steal if you think about how many bottles of pills you would have to buy. So that is something that we do and something that I think is great if you're like, I'm not ready to try something as, big as a hormone or something as, expensive as a peptide. It's something that you can do for yourself and kind of dip your toes in.
I'm like, sign me up. I want to do that. That sounds absolutely genius because I think, we see on social media, it's very much like what I eat in a day, supplements I take. We see all this content on social media where we're seeing what other people are doing. And I think that this is like a problem because
Mm,
it's like we're constantly being fed also ads about this green supplement or this supplement or whatever. There's so many supplements in the industry. And it's like what's right for one person could not be right for you. And I always
totally.
like I never share my supplements online because I'm like, I don't want to tell some mom who doesn't need what I take. And now I'm like, maybe I'm taking stuff I don't know that I don't need to take. Like I'm like, I need to do this whole panel, Katie. But
Well, absolutely, because it's a lot of money, right? Supplements are not cheap. So if you think about like, is it working? And the cool thing
right.
about this is like you can literally take another lab test in 6 months or a year and see if your levels have changed. So that's a real way to say, I don't need this or I need something else or, change things up.
That's genius. That's so good. So for someone listening who is they know something's off with how they feel, or maybe they wake up tired, or what are some of the most common signs? And we'll just kind of go back to metabolic dysfunction because you said 70% of Americans have metabolic dysfunction. I think that's a great place to start. What are some of the common signs our listeners should be looking out for that maybe they need to reach out, get support, start taking supplements, look into some of these things that they need to become aware of?
Obviously weight gain and not being able to take the weight off is a sign that something is off, clearly. But other than that, I feel like something just huge is energy. Like, do you have energy to get through the day, or are you relying just on caffeine, or are you crashing? Like, energy is something that we all need, and if that's off, then probably something else is off too. And then there's also, bloating, inflammation, skin issues. Those are also probably signs that something's, going on wrong in the inside, and you could really benefit from some lifestyle changes.
So we talked a lot about metabolic health. What about, I mean, is it educate us on hormonal health? Because I think someone who's listening is thinking, okay, is my metabolism, my hormones, how are they all connected? How do they intersect to give me maybe really great pregnancies or a worse or better postpartum, or like you had mentioned your own story, you after you having your babies going and then experiencing perimenopause and then menopause. How does, obviously we could probably be here and talk about this for hours, but in a simple way for our listeners to understand, how do we need to be aware of our hormones and how they take a huge role in how we experience these things as women?
Yeah, I mean, hormones are basically everything. They are the thing. They are the foundation. Hormones are our metabolic health because that is literally what controls our metabolic health. If you think about thyroid, insulin, those are hormones. Cortisol is a hormone. Obviously, when you think of hormones, you think of estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, those also as well. But ghrelin and leptin are your hunger signaling hormones. So hormones are not just, they don't just intersect, but they're literally everything to regulating your metabolism and ultimately regulating how you feel.
The big one that everyone's talking about on Instagram right now is cortisol.
Mm.
Cortisol face. Have you seen these reels?
Oh, no, but I'm sure I will now.
Okay, you will now. Everyone's talking about how here, and they show a before photo and it's their cortisol face and it's like a
Oh.
puffier face. And then the post is like my snatched jawline and I fix my cortisol, and like everyone's pushing a supplement for it. And it's almost predictable at this point, but it's been I mean, especially this summer. I mean, my algorithm was like everyone's talking about cortisol face. So I think that's a good one to talk about because it's so relevant, at least in the online space right now.
Hmm.
What are signs that your cortisol is elevated and that you need to get that checked?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think so what we do is we test for cortisol, and we do a fasting test in the morning, and I can tell you that that is something I don't have all the answers to because every time I test mine it's high. Clearly, I'm not doing a good job of it, but I think honestly, it's high for so many people because of just like what's going on in our modern world. We're looking at screens too much, we're stressing too much, there's just too much going on. So cortisol is a real issue, and it's something that we should all be working on, whether that's just taking a break, taking it easy on yourself, getting some sunshine. It's a real issue that we see affecting a lot of our patients, and myself included.
I'm sure mine included too. Like postpartum, 4 months postpartum at the time of this recording. I'm sure my cortisol is not ideal.
Yeah.
What are some like supplements, or if someone was going to reach for something that you would suggest for cortisol?
There are a ton of different supplements, adrenal support. There's different herbs and mushrooms that are great. But I would say I think it's a hard one because I think that there's not necessarily a pill that you can take. I think it's mindset. I think it's lifestyle. So I think that that's probably why people are attached onto that and trying to sell stuff for that, because it's like if there was something easy for that, sign me up. But it's kind of all the things.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It's like how you do one thing, it's how you
Yeah.
do everything.
I mean, I can tell you that as women age, when we lose our estrogen, and this wouldn't be you since you're younger, but when we lose our estrogen's an excellent stress hormone. So when we lose that in menopause, then we rely more on cortisol to be that stress reaction. So during that time, estrogen can really help with that and balance that out, and kind of help with the cortisol stress response. But before that, you can't be on estrogen until you're close to menopause. Before that, you got to do all the lifestyle stuff.
You have to do the hard work.
You do.
You do. And I'm like, I had this moment yesterday where I'm like, I'm 35. I have 2 kids. I'm going to be 36 in March. Where has the time gone? It's freaking me
Mm.
out a little bit. And I'd love to hear your advice for women in their 30s, approaching their 40s. I'm not sure exactly around when you are seeing your patients or clients approaching when they're in perimenopause or when they're hitting menopause. I'd love for you to, divulge with us if you could on when people should be expecting that, or what a healthy time frame. But
Mm.
what advice would you give to someone who is approaching their 40s? Some things that they can do, some of the most important advice, maybe things that you wish you knew.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the most people, I feel like the sweet spot of people that come to me are like 38 to 42ish, and they're like, What's going on? Like, I all of a sudden I feel more tired. I'm not sleeping through the night. Like my energy's off. They're just like, I don't know what it is, but it's off. Just I'm off. And it's pretty common around, usually around that age. I think it's so wonderful to just be aware when you're in your mid to upper 30s, to be aware that you're entering like a really critical time, like a super critical time for you to decide really
Mm.
what you're going to do to make the last half of your life better. Because I think that things that you've used to be doing, things that you're used to, won't work as well. And so how you treat yourself and how you care for yourself will really determine, how you live really the last half of your life, because there's this gap between lifespan and health span, and right now people are, you living 10 to 15 years in a really crappy state where like it's not good. Like it's not worth it in some cases or a lot of times. So I feel like whatever you can do to close that gap is critical, and it starts around that time. It starts in your upper 30s, 40s.
I'm thinking about my mom. She's in menopause, past menopause, but she's still experiencing some of these just indicators that like things are off. I specifically her sleep.
Mm,
I think I've heard that a lot. I think temperature change in your body. Like once you're
yeah.
there, so say someone's like, I'm already there. Like these things are already happening and they're
Yeah.
not ideal. What do you say to someone who's there? Like what are some things they can do to start to regulate themselves? I think that's the thing. It's like maybe they didn't get the information soon enough and they're already experiencing all this. Can they go back and repair some things so that they can feel vibrant again?
Yeah, I think that's first of all, that's sad because you're right on, like they didn't get the information, unfortunately. And it's really important that women do have that information, access to that information, because when you think about like loss, like we have hormones for 50 years of our life, and they are the foundation of everything. And so when we lose those, it has big effects. And you should have choices and know what's going on in your body so that you can decide like what's right for you. But it's not too late for women who didn't know. It's certainly, they should still go to someone who's trained in hormones and trained in menopause care and talk to their doctor about what options are there, because it's certainly not too late. You're never going to, if you get on HRT when you're older, you're never going to reverse anything that's already done,
Mm.
but you can still get symptom relief, and you can start feeling better like in your everyday life, for the rest of your life. So it's not too late, but it's just important to go to someone who has studied this and who's up on all the latest research and who knows how to care for people in that stage.
You've mentioned lifestyle a lot, and I'd love to know if there's like maybe your top 5 or top things. I'm going to just keep referring to social media because I think it's such a huge play in our culture of what women believe or think they should be doing
Mm,
to improve their health. And I think that's where at least my generation is going to find information. I think a lot of our listeners are going to a traditional doctor less and less, and they're more looking for alternative ways to get healthy. And I think that's where they're finding out about companies like Joi, or they're like maybe going to a functional medicine practitioner, or they're just very hungry for different information because what has been working for them
mm.
isn't anymore, or what they thought should be working. So maybe for, our listeners who might be saying, okay, give us like a tiny mini crash course on lifestyle. You had mentioned things like blue light, I don't know if protein's in there, but what are some of the top like things, lifestyle things we should be doing to feel our best?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now you'll see this all over social media too, and I think it's because it's true and it works. I think you need to focus on, getting adequate protein, and you need to focus, women need to focus on having muscle and keeping muscle, because it's super important as we age. So that's lifting weights. Cardio is great and important, but you need that muscle to like have that body composition that you want, and to be able to, muscle is also what regulates that metabolism. So that's what's going to burn that, fuel that you take in. So I think protein and muscle is super important. And then we talked about this with cortisol. That's the big piece too that can F everything up. You've got to like get your mindset right, and you got to
Mm,
take breaks, and you've got to do, do things that bring you joy and not just like burn yourself out all the time.
mm. That's so hard to do, I think, in our world today.
It
It's
is.
like turning off, taking breaks. But I think it's what so many people are craving.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so powerful. One of the last questions I want to ask you, because I think I'd be remiss to not ask you, is there has, and to kind of go back to our GLP conversation, there has been some negativity around Ozempic on Instagram, on social media, people saying that it made them sick or it made so and so, end up in the hospital. Like you see all these crazy things about um, Ozempic specifically. I'd love for you to help us understand maybe like, is it that those people were not using the right dosage? Is it that they maybe just got it from a med spa and they were like not proper? And that's kind of my perspective. But I'd love to hear in your professional opinion of why is it getting a bad rap and
Mm.
how can people be ensured that they are using it safely and effectively?
I think there's probably a couple different parts to that. Like it's getting a bad rap because it's weight loss that's actually working for people, and I think unfortunately there's so much shame in our society about people being obese or overweight that there's just, you see the comments that are just like eat less and like stupid stuff like that all over. And so that I think there's like a social horrible social like just perspective that way that needs to change, and that's just one part of it. It shouldn't be there. It's like there's so many different medications for so many different things that no one gets shamed for, but this is a whole different story, and it's just wrong. But the other part of it is that there are people also doing it wrong, people that want to just lose weight really fast, and or you know the brands came out with one pen that's used for like pretty obese people, and the dose doesn't change. And
Mm.
that's not the right dose for some people.
Oh, wow.
So that's very important to, in any time when you're losing weight, it's very important to go low and slow and go the healthy way. And so anyone that's overdoes it or does too much for their body type will get negative effects. But it's not just this GLP-1 that will do that. Like you can literally overdose on vitamin D and get sick. I mean, insulin is a peptide, and if you, it's life saving for people. But if you can overdose on insulin, that will kill you. So it's a lot of times about the dose and how you use things.
Wow. That's so well said because it's just like a hot mess, honestly, when you go and if you were to go to like, for example, TikTok and you're like on TikTok and you search Ozempic and you just see so much crazy stuff on it. And I just love your perspective because I think it gives people, like you said, permission of like, because it does work. And if
Hmm.
someone really is genuinely struggling with, I mean, having babies, going through this whole season, it's freaking hard. And then you get your postpartum and you're like, I don't recognize myself. Like, what is going on? And you're sleep deprived and you're probably nutrient deprived. And,
Yeah.
I think it's like, it's genius to be able to say, like, maybe I'm going to support my body in some additional ways.
Yeah, I mean, and also like listen, you and I could eat the same thing and work out the same way and have two totally different outcomes. Like
Wow.
it's so complicated, right? Like it's not like the same, it's no like calories in versus calories out. Like it's just not that simple. So I think that, the shame around it and the comparison around it is just like it's just pretty ridiculous, and we need to not listen to online bullies anyway, but
Yeah, 100%. So, on the forefront of what you guys are doing as a company with Joy, I'd love to know, is there anything exciting coming down the pipeline? Are you guys working? And also, PS, like shout out to you guys have an entire separate company for men as well.
We do actually,
We
and
need to talk about that. Hold on. Yes, because I mean, our listeners have husbands, so we need to talk about that.
yeah, I mean, honestly, so my husband and I work together, which is a whole nother set of issues. But no, we started. My husband actually started the company first. He started a company called Blokes, which is for men. Because when I was trying to have babies, he literally all of a sudden like had zero sex drive, and he was in his early 30s and basically got gaslit and couldn't find help. He had traditional classic hypogonadism, which meant his testosterone was oddly low, but all the doctors told him you're fine. So he struggled for several years and then finally got help on his own. So he started the company first, and that was how, that was how I was able to get access, is I went through the men's version of the company. And then after I did that, I was like, holy shit, like women need this. So we do it together. And, next year we are actually planning on combining our sites. Right now we have two different, so we're going to be one site and redesign and be a lot bigger and better and fancier next year, which I'm excited about.
That's so exciting. And I keep seeing this as well as the statistic that keeps popping up is how sperm count
Mm.
is so down, and testosterone, it's like in the last 50 years, testosterone is down by 50%. It's like something insane. Like
It's
what
insane. It's really scary actually,
it
but
it's terrifying. And I keep
yeah.
seeing so many people, and I'd love to hear if you can lend to this conversation as well. I keep seeing so many posts and things about people struggling to get pregnant,
Mm,
and like a lot of struggles around trying to conceive. Are these
mhm.
linked? What do you think is causing this insane dip in
Yeah.
testosterone in our men?
I mean, I think it's all the horrible like ways that we live in this modern world. I think it's all the endocrine disruptors that are out there, the plastics, the our soil depletion, the air pollution quality, like all the chemicals out there that we can't really get away from are really, you know, changing our hormones. I mean, they're literal endocrine disruptors, which means they are disrupting the hormones in our body. Um, and it's of course stress too, with all the stress that we have and how we just go, and that's when we talked about cortisol. But all of that is really, really literally changing the hormones inside of both men and women. And that's why people aren't feeling great, and people are realizing that we really need to change some things about what we're doing and how we're living. And I'm hopeful that some of that will start changing.
Me too. I really am. I think about my kids. I mean, I don't know how old your kids are, but my kids are still quite young. I
Yeah.
think about my boys. Think about what is the world going to look like that they're going to live in,
Mm.
and what can I do? Maybe that's another question I'd love for your perspective, your wisdom as a mother too. What can we do as parents to
Mm.
raise healthy kids in this world with so many toxins, and how challenging it feels at times
It does.
to
And I
battle
mean,
all of
I
it,
I certainly don't want to like you can't focus on it and just be fearful every day, but
for
I
sure.
think that you have to do all the things that you can, like in terms of getting the plastics out of your house and not have them drink from plastic bottles, and trying to eat as organic as you can, or especially like the dirty dozen ones, if budget is a concern. I think you got to really look at what's in everything that you're putting in your body and on your body. I mean, if you look at just as women, all the cosmetic stuff that we put on as well, that's all has all the scents. If you're doing perfumes and if you're doing deodorants, like every single input has an effect. So you know, I think looking at all that stuff is very important.
I agree. I agree. Well, how can our listeners connect with you and Joy specifically? Say they're really curious about whether smart supplements are right for them, or if they want to jump into peptides. Where is the best place for them to connect with you
Yeah.
and Joy?
Yeah, come hang out on Instagram. We are there all the time, and that's Joy Women's. No, it's Joy Women's Wellness. Joi is how Joy is spelled, and then a consult is a great way to start. We've got a schedule a consultation button on the website, and that's, you can meet either with a clinician or a health coach, and our health coaches are phenomenal. Like I said, they're naturopathic doctors, they're dietitians, they're registered nurses, they're Navy SEALs. So they
Wow.
can they can really, be a great resource for you if you're like, I don't know where to start, and I just want to feel better.
I love that. I want to work with the Navy SEAL one. Who's that? I'm like, that's my vibe. I love that. Oh
We
my
got you.
gosh. Katie, you're amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show. And, I know our listeners are going to get so much from this. And we're excited to follow along with what you guys have going in the next year to
Thank
come.
you. You're so sweet. It was great talking to you.
Thank you. So there you have it. If you loved this conversation, make sure you follow Joi Wellness on Instagram at Joi, spelled Joi, Women's Wellness. and hit them up. If you have been looking for some support around your own well being, maybe you want to get your hormones looked at, you want to get a full blood panel, and maybe even look into peptides, I highly suggest reaching out to Joy. Katie and her team are incredible, and I don't think you'll be disappointed.